What's going on, y'all? Thanks for checking in with Callie. Please like, subscribe if you haven't. So it looks like former Clippers star player has thrown some shade at his former Clipper players, or at least a few of them. And, the situation where Paul George did his media day, and, he said in his media day, this is the first time he's ever played with a elite point guard like Tyrese Maxey and an elite big man at the same time. So the crazy thing about this situation is with him saying that, it's not only Clipper players or a couple of Clipper players that that could be taken as he's throwing shade at them, but you can also look at OKC as well. Because if Paul George goes up there and say what he said, which he did, this is his first time he played with an elite point guard and big man at the same time. And it could be taken in so many different ways, what he said. And I feel like it just added more pressure to him, his team, his teammates, and everything in regarding the 76ers organization going into this season. Because you could look at that as, okay, if you want to say it, you want to speak from a Clippers perspective, you could say he disrespected Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook was an elite point guard, even though he wasn't the elite point guard he was previous. But you can also say he disrespected Russell Westbrook in both phases, because he disrespected Russ as a Clipper. He disrespected Russ as a point guard, a great point guard, elite point guard when he was on the OKC Thunder. Because that was when Russ was really at his peak then on OKC, more so than he is or was on the Clippers. But he still played at a pretty decent level on the Clippers before they got James Harden. And you look at the beginning of last season, and then the season before that, and he had moments where he played pretty good as their point guard. Now, of course, he's turnover prone. But, James Harden can be turnover prone, too. So, you can make the case for both of them having that issue. But regardless, and then on top of that, speaking of James Harden, if you say that you never played with an elite point guard, is that throwing shade at James Harden, too? You see what I'm getting at? It's like it's so many ways that could be taken. I don't think Paul George should have made that statement. And then he said never played with an elite big man. Well, he's right about that. But, it still comes off wrong because you're still talking about Zubac, which I don't really have much in regards to Zubac. If he's talking about Zubac, I don't have no problem with that one because Zubac is so up and down and so inconsistent and so non-dominant the way a lot of, people projected him to be when he first got in the league like 8 years ago with the Lakers, actually. And his potential and his ceiling really has capped off at this point in time. It's not going any higher, I don't believe. But some people might actually take it the wrong way because a lot of people actually liked or look at Steven Adams, maybe not as a dominant big man, but he's dominant enough on the defensive end because, or at least at one point he was, because he's a very good rebounder. He's a very good disruptor in the paint, and he will, he's not an elite shot blocker, but he will attempt to block shots, and he plays defense, and he moves his feet really well to be a big man. And I'm pretty sure the Clippers, along with a lot of teams, would love to have somebody like Steven Adams if he's able to stay healthy and, take him over a lot of other big men in the league. I'm pretty sure they would. He may not be considered as an elite big man in regards to scoring, but defensively, when he was, staying healthy, more so in his prime, he was a very, very good big man, close to being elite defensively. Maybe not scoring, but at least defensively. So, you could look at it from a multitude of ways, but I just think that ultimately Paul George is putting his foot in his mouth with these comments because you don't want to do too much talking when you haven't won anything, and Paul George hasn't, and you don't want to put too much pressure on your current team just because you have a lot of good pieces there. They got, of course, himself, Embiid, Maxey. You went and got Reggie Jackson off the bench. You still got Kelly Oubre, a pretty good piece. They got some really good pieces, on that team. But for him to say that, it just sounds like he's throwing shade at other players who have played the positions that he talked about and played pretty good at their position, especially that point guard position, because, Russ is definitely looked at as a top point guard in a lot of people's eyes, or at least revered. He was revered as one in his prime. James Harden, same thing. James Harden actually played pretty decent last year in the regular season. So I mean, it's not like he played horrible or anything. So I mean, it's like, I don't know. Paul George, to me, he does a lot more talking than he does winning. And that's the one thing about him I never liked. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the reason why I push back on a lot of fans, you know, who were saying he's better than Kawhi Leonard and all that stuff when he was in a Clippers uniform. That's 100% false. 100% false. Any Clippers fan who thought that he was better than Kawhi Leonard is just a dumb statement, because first of all, great players, they don't really do all that type of talking. They don't make statements like this unless they've either won or unless they're really saying something that has validity. And what he's saying has no validity because he played with a top point guard before in Russell Westbrook. He played with an elite point guard before with James Harden. You know what I'm saying? He's played with elite talent. And honestly, you played with so much elite talent, there's no reason why you shouldn't even have a championship. There's no reason for it. Paul George, if he's somebody's GOAT out there, which some people were stupidly saying, then why hasn't he even been to a finals? Why hasn't he even been to an NBA final? Let's leave the championship part alone. How come he hasn't been to one? Now, he has a great chance of getting to one this year, but I mean, I wouldn't even really, pencil that in, because I mean, the Boston Celtics are still in the East. The East is pretty tough. Then you got the New York Knicks, where they just acquired Karl Anthony Towns. Then you still got the Miami Heat lurking around. You know how Miami can just go on a run, then go from the play-in tournament all the way to the finals. They just find themselves in good positions or play very well when the playoffs come because they got great coaching and, good role players. And, Jimmy plays good under that system that Eric Spoelstra has. So you don't want to rule them out. And then let's not forget about the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, this is another year with Giannis and Damian Lillard together. So, I mean, they might actually be better than what they were last year, of course. So, I mean, it's no guarantee that the 76ers are going to get that far and make it to the finals and win the championship. They can, because they got enough pieces to do it. Talent wise, they're the most talented, probably one of the most talented teams in the NBA if you look at them from a talent standpoint. But I mean, I don't think they're going to beat the Celtics. But I mean, anything is possible. I wouldn't rule it out because they do have a really good team. But when you start out saying things like this and adding more pressure to your team, you're just making it harder on your guys. And the fact that you have a superstar big man, which he didn't mention, and Joel Embiid, who is an elite big man. One thing he didn't mention is a lot of his big men that he played with might not have been elite prior to Joel Embiid, but they haven't been as injury prone either. That's the one part he didn't mention. So, I mean, that's one thing he need to take into account if he's going to make this type of statement. And then if you say, you haven't played with elite point guards, well, as I said before, what about Russ and what about James Harden? That's an elite point guard. But even if he didn't even play with elite point guards, he still played with enough talent to have won a championship. So I don't understand why he hasn't at this point. But I mean, like I said, maybe that could be rectified this year. But I personally think the Celtics are going to go back to the finals in the East. And I think that's just the way it is. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia went to the finals or something like that, because they do have enough. They do have a lot of talent on their team enough to go. And Joel Embiid is a really good, player, big man. So I'm not going to discredit anything there. So is Tyrese Maxey, has been impressive also. So, I mean, when you look at their team is stacked. But I mean, I just think Paul George always always says all the wrong things. I mean, just like last year in the postseason where, they were like the second or third game in the first round against the Dallas Mavericks. And then he talks about, there's no pressure. There's no pressure to win. There's no pressure to that. Why is it no pressure to win? You see what I'm saying? He's always saying the wrong things in the media. This is the reason why he's a loser. He's never been a winner. Even if he wins with Philadelphia 76ers, to me, he's still a loser, because you done went through so many superstar players, played with so much superstar talent. You got to win at some point, I guess, if you're playing with this much talent. I mean, he didn't play with Kawhi, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. I mean, now you're looking at Joel Embiid. I mean, he's played with some talent, man. He's played with some superstar type talent, and as good as people think he is, there's no reason why he shouldn't even been in the finals by now. But I mean, it just goes to show when you're doing too much talking more than focusing on your game, it always comes out to the left, the negative. It always does. Now he's doing all this podcast P and all this stuff over the last year or so. He's not even really focused on basketball, I think 100%. Was the reason why he's still coming up short, being playoff P, way off P in the playoffs. And it's like, he's going from one situation to the other, and it's just a mess with Paul George. And that's the reason why I never been a big fan of his, never believed in his, his skill set overall as a championship caliber player. And that's the reason why he's just on another team. And, maybe it'll work out for him there. Who knows? But at the same time, I've never been a big fan of the guy. I respect him. I respect his game because he does have a nice game. His game is awesome. Like when he's on point, his game is nice. I'm not going to take that from him, but he's just not a winner. And I like guys who win, and I like guys who have the winning mentality. And he just doesn't have it to me. So with that being said, it is what it is. But I mean, we'll see what happens during the season. But if Philadelphia doesn't win the championship or doesn't even make it to a finals, it's going to be pretty embarrassing, not only with these comments made, but also with all the hoopla and rah-rah around this team, like they can really go far and win it, and they come up short and don't even make it to a finals. That'll be ultimately embarrassing, but we'll just see how it falls.